English is a weird language, right? Why is the plural of goose geese, but the plural of moose isn't meese? If you speak another language besides English, you might have noticed a few weird things about your own language. For example, in French, why is a table considered feminine? You might therefore be interested in Lojban, the so-called logical language. Lojban is a constructed language that was created in 1997 by the Logical Language Group. Originally, it was designed to test the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is the idea that the language we speak affects the way we think. If you spoke a language that is completely logical and unambiguous, would you end up thinking more logically? Although we still haven't reached a conclusive answer, Lojban still has a handful of enthusiasts today, looking to speak a language which challenges them to be rational when they speak. But is Lojban really what people claim it is? Personally, I tend to be very skeptical. If you call your language logical, it implies that every other language around the world is illogical, which is simply false. Everyone around the world communicates with each other just fine, so there's really nothing wrong with human language in the first place. What exactly does Lojban fix about human language? To find out, I took a deep dive into the grammar of Lojban to understand how it worked. Lojban has a reputation for being complicated and hard to learn, and that's definitely true. I still have a lot that I don't know about yet. To help answer my question, I tried to see what Lojban fans specifically said about its grammar that they liked. There's a good article on the website lojban.org called Top 10 Reasons to Learn Lojban. Not every reason is relevant to this video. For example, number 7 is it's fun, but it was a good reference as it highlighted a few points about how Lojban is supposed to be more logical than natural human languages. Interestingly, I didn't find any explicit statement from this article or the logical language group that Lojban's goal is to be more logical. Instead, they usually make more limited claims like Lojban reduces ambiguities in the way we speak. Sentences can still be vague when you choose to leave out information, but the meaning of what you say can never be confused with something else. To achieve this, Lojban promises zero homophones. The article says, Lojban has no words that sound alike but have different meanings, like heard and heard, that have multiple unrelated meanings, set, or that differ only in pronunciation but not in sound, like the abominable its and its. Which is fair enough, I guess. Other constructed languages like Esperanto have a rather carelessly designed system of derivational morphology, which creates numerous homophones. Firegido can either mean a corrupt prince or the offspring of a tyrant, depending on which affix you think applies first. Some of the ways that Lojban avoids ambiguity is so simple I can't believe they actually work. For example, the sentence, I pass nobody on the road and nobody walks faster than me, can be considered a paradox if nobody is considered the name of a person. So all names and proper nouns are prefixed with la. That's it. But okay, Lojban's grammar does go deeper than that. You can draw up a list of all the things that annoy you about English and try to fix that, but that would be very inefficient. Lojban approaches the problem of ambiguity in a systematic way. Its grammar is based on predicate logic. Predicate logic is, as far as I can understand it, a very formal way of structuring statements to make arguments, which has some elements of math and set theory in it. For example, we might make this kind of logical deduction. Socrates is a man, all men are mortal, therefore Socrates is mortal. We take the statement Socrates is a man and break it up into two parts, the subject Socrates and the predicate X is a man. The predicate is shortened into something like a function in mathematics. Man Plato, man Aristotle, etc. Enter the cellbri. Cellbri and Lojban are basically verbs, but they're called cellbri because they're more specifically predicates. In our Socrates example earlier, predicate logic would simplify the predicate into a function called man, which can be used for other subjects. Cellbri are basically these programming functions turned into verbs. This cellbri, Veshnu, can only take four sumti, or nouns or arguments. The cellbri can appear anywhere in the sentence without changing the meaning, but the first sumti always denotes the seller, the second the goods, and so on. Celebrity can only have a limited number of arguments, and its meaning is always the same. To give Lojban its due, researching it made me appreciate just how much its creators were able to do with predicate logic. I appreciate that its creators stuck with the concept of a predicate logic-based grammar and really thought it out as much as possible. Predicate logic lets Lojban easily do what no other human language can do. I like the assignable pro-sumti and pro-breedy. It's like a spoken word version of programming variables. Just as you can assign a value to x in a programming language, you can assign your friend Alice the pronoun koha and use that to refer to her every single time, no matter how long the conversation has gone on for. And you have 10 such pronouns ready to go. That's a very computery way of approaching language, and I find that fun. You can't casually use words like something, everything, nothing in Lojban. You have to adhere to predicate logic. In predicate logic, the statement, all men are mortal, is a little tricky. It would be expressed as something like, for every entity in the world, call it X. If X is a man, then X is also mortal. In Lojban, you can't say, something sees me. You can only assert, there is an X, such that X sees me. This lets you express certain details very easily. You can't just say, 3 dogs bite 2 men. Instead, you must be more specific and say something like, 3 X's which are dogs bite 2 Y's which are men, or each of the 3 X's which are dogs bites 2 Y's which are men. So one could argue Lojban is a logical language like so. Lojban is based on predicate logic. Everything based on predicate logic is logical. Therefore, Lojban is logical. I would disagree with the second proposition. Having a language based on predicate logic does not make your language more logical. While Lojban's use of predicate logic does reduce ambiguities in grammar, trying to adhere to predicate logic causes a lot of problems and limitations. Lojban's grammar is less elegant and efficient than a natural language. Firstly, are homophones really that bad? According to Lojban, the problem with homophones is that a sentence can be parsed in multiple contradictory ways. It claims that through its predicate logic grammar, utterances can only have one possible meaning. But like I just said earlier, the context of a conversation helps you parse the meaning. We rarely say things in isolation. Context often helps us. I heard sheep can either mean you're a shepherd or you listen to a sheep making noise. But how often is this ambiguity a problem? In English, a heard is a noun phrase denoting a thing. He heard is a sentence describing an action. It's really not as bad as it sounds. Given that human beings only have so many sounds that we can distinguish, homophones let you have 2 words for the price of 1. Isn't that efficient and logical? By contrast, Celebrity and Lojban are incredibly inefficient. Lojban really tries its best to make this system as flexible as possible, but it's hard to salvage. If you want to rearrange the order of sumti, the arguments, there are particles that help you to do so. If you want to leave out arguments, there are pronouns for that, but you cannot add any new arguments. You are at the mercy of Lojban's creators to determine them for you. This is especially annoying when it comes to celery that are basically adjectives. According to Lojban, all adjectives are relative. A dog can't be just big. It's either big by the standard of other dogs, big as compared to a building, big as compared to a mouse, and so on. This would be a cute distinction in a natural language, but far from what I call logical. In most languages, this is almost always left up to context, and we get by just fine. Even searching through the Lojban reference grammar, I cannot find an example sentence that uses the third argument in Barda. It's even left out by the authors of this grammar because it's a superfluous detail in almost every conversation, and yet every adjective has this as a potential sumti. Why? Lojban's system of predicates and arguments are really just inferior to how prepositions or case marking work in natural languages. Verbs are actually already somewhat like celery. They naturally have different numbers of arguments. We call them intransitive, transitive, and ditransitive verbs. And the subjects and objects of these verbs have an accepted meaning. However, if you want to add extra arguments, such as the location, time, instrument used, purpose, etc., you can use prepositions, or the phrase would be marked with a noun case. So verbs can do everything that celery can do, plus extra. Lojban would be more intuitive and flexible if it just had verbs, and then focused on instead rigorously defining the meaning of prepositions. Or, if you're still attracted to the idea of predicate logic functions, you could maybe take a page out of Chinese grammar and have the prepositions work like verbs, which are basically celery. I may be misunderstanding the grammar of Lojban because of all the new terminologies, but if I'm not wrong, sometimes Lojban writers try to get around this gap by using relative clauses and combining multiple syllabi to form compounds. Oh, speaking of compound words are another potential source of ambiguity, which Lojban tries to fix but doesn't really. The Lojban reference grammar points a finger at the phrase, pretty little girl's school, and asks, does the school look little? Do the girls look little? Do the girls look pretty? Does the school look pretty? Then you can also ask, does the word pretty mean beautiful or fairly? Is it the school that the girl goes to? Or is it an all-girls school? Lojban can express each and every single one of these meanings without ambiguity and without circumlocution or overhead. The way Lojban solves this is with the particle bo, which is designed to function as a spoken hyphen, as well as ke and kehe, which are spoken brackets. According to Lojban, the problem here is bracketing the words rather than defining the relationships between each word. Once we bracket up girl and school together, we're supposed to logically know what the compound means. Even though we don't. Is a girls' school a school for girls? A school run by girls? A school owned by girls? Lojban itself admits that it has no idea how to rigorously define compound words. There is no way to tell just by looking at the phrase lemon tree exactly what it refers to, even if you know the meaning of lemon and tree by themselves. As English speakers, we must simply know that it refers to a tree which bears lemons as fruits. A person who didn't know English very well might think of it as analogous to brown tree and wonder, what kind of tree is lemon-colored? No general theory covering the meaning of all possible Tanru exists. Probably no such theory can exist. So it just gives up and tries to only use compound words that are attested in other languages. But hey, if you've ever said the phrase pretty little girl's school and you were referring to a school that is also simultaneously a girl, Lojban's got you covered. In my opinion, a better way of handling this is using more relative clauses and nominalizers. Lojban tries this, but the logical connective je isn't nearly as flexible. Verbs and prepositions are better at describing relationships between nouns than compound words. Instead of girls' school, why not place where girls are taught? Or place where girls teach? Instead of lemon tree, why not tree that bears fruit, which is a lemon? This method is used extensively in Navajo, as verbs in Navajo can, in just 4 syllables, specify the subject, object, direction, and much more. You know, everyone thinks it's cute when the Navajo word for army tank is car that crawls about, which is used to make explosions in and in which they sit up on. But hey, guess who's the logical language now? The advantage of this system is that the name of something is its definition. Lojban's creators will say that it's circumlocucious, and by that they mean it takes a lot of words. But that's a flimsy excuse. English is somehow ambiguous when pretty has 2 different meanings as an adjective and an adverb, and yet when every single Tanru or compound word in Lojban is semantically ambiguous, that's being specific. There are also some random weird design choices in Lojban that sound good on paper but don't quite work. It's worth mentioning that a lot of people dislike the orthography of Lojban. Lojban uses an apostrophe for h and a full stop for the glottal stop, and the letter h is not used at all for some reason. The reason why the glottal fricative h and the glottal stop are different from other consonants in Lojban is because they're only used for certain grammatical processes. For example, h is inserted between 2 vowels to prevent hiatus. However, this just makes Lojban look an awful lot like an alien language from a cheesy sci-fi novel. Lojban's vocabulary is generated by an algorithm. It takes words from Chinese, English, Hindi, Spanish, Russian, and Arabic, the 6 most widely spoken languages, and puts them through an algorithm that mashes all the sounds together until it's equally recognizable to everyone. It's great that Lojban's creators had the interests of many of the world's languages in mind. But then we get words like Shukta, Gerku, Shmavo. Taking sounds from 6 very different sounding languages can lead to inconsistent results. So to make these words fit together regularly, most Lojban root words consist of 5 segments in the shape CCV-CV or CVC-CV, meaning that every noun in Lojban either has an initial consonant cluster or a medial consonant cluster. This leads to a lot of heavy sounding syllables, which can be very ugly when overused. Lojban is hence full of words that sound like they could be the name of a troll from Homestuck. The article I mentioned describes the sound of Lojban as such. Lojban has a smooth, rhythmic sound, somewhat like Italian. However, its consonants create a fullness and power found in Slavic languages like Russian, and the large number of vowel pairs impart a hint of Chinese, Polynesian, and other Oriental languages, though without the tones that makes many of these languages difficult for others to learn. That's not how I would describe Lojban. I think what they actually mean is something like Lojban has the 5 vowels a, e, I, o, u, so that's kind of like Italian. Well, actually that's more like Spanish, but actually it's a bit like Malay since it has schwa. But that doesn't sound as romantic as saying Lojban sounds like Italian. It also has h, which if you squint makes it totally like Russian. And it has diphthongs, which is kind of like Chinese. It's very oriental, trust me, it's not Eurocentric, I promise. Lojban is such a tech bro language, and it makes the classic tech bro mistake of maximizing one benefit at the cost of everything else. A tank of algae produces way more oxygen than a tree, but nobody wants a tank of algae by the roadside because trees offer us so much more than just oxygen. Lojban thinks predicate logic makes itself more consistent and logical, but instead it loses the flexibility, elegance, and efficiency of natural languages. Human language is not illogical. Everything has a reason for being there. In my humble opinion, those who want to fix language are those who don't love language and have not even tried to understand it in the first place. To Robert Baruch, that the verb run has different meanings in I run a mile and I run a program is only a historical accident, a terrible lapse in the good sense of English speakers. But I see run in run a program as the causative form of I run a mile. You're making a program run. When we say a program runs, we're using running as a metaphor for ongoing activity. It's poetry in everyday speech. What's not to like? For me, I love languages too much to want to fix them. To really improve language, one must satisfy a paradox: to love them enough to study them, and yet to hate them enough to want to change them. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching. If I've made a mistake about Lojban's grammar, please leave a comment about it, and thumbs up those who've already commented what you're thinking. I'm not a linguist, so if there's anything about Lojban's grammar that I've missed out on, I'm glad to hear it. In fact, I hope we can all discuss more about Lojban's grammar instead of the number 42.